So good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our Monday, 7 a.m. sitting here in California. And some of you recognize Patachara is back. The there are some big forest fires some 6 miles away from our retreat center, and so some of the resident volunteers who live there evacuated, and they brought with them some Patachara, and to protect her from the fires. Fires are quite far from the center, but there were no evacuation orders right by our center, but a mile away there was evacuation. So some of them evacuated, and here we are. And I'm very happy to have Patachara back. So So for this morning's meditation, I wanted to see if I can make a distinction that'd be useful for you to consider during the meditation. And that is that there are different forms of thinking, different levels of thinking, and that the most common place where people get in trouble with their thinking is at a form of thinking that's often called discursive thinking. It's the thinking where we tell ourselves stories, where we're actively having a conversation with people, a conversation with ourselves. And it's often a place that's easily fueled by our emotions. So if there's anxiety and worry, it will fuel the discursive storytelling mind. And below that, I think of it deeper down inside, there's a quieter form of thinking that is not so much telling stories, that is closer to where wisdom resides, understanding resides. And it tends to have a much simpler relationship to what's happening in the immediate present. It doesn't tell a story about it, it's not involved in a lot of discursive judgments and commentary. It's a place where there's not as much social conditioning from our life experience, our family, our society, internalized voices from our society and people and family. It's a place that tends to be quieter, more peaceful, and where more of our wisdom resides. It's where a more deeper understanding surfaces, is in that quieter kind of thinking. So as you meditate today, you might consider that, yes, we're letting go of discursive thinking, but that doesn't mean you have to let go of all thinking. The advantage of letting go of discursive thinking is that you can then start listening, or sensing, feeling, listening, seeing this deeper layer, deeper place where thinking can reside, and then we have more access to our own wisdom as well. So to start this sitting, you can. Just now I realized I was welcoming you to Monday morning. I've been away from up in the mountains, so today's Sunday morning, and not 7 a.m., and it's 9:30 now in California. So it takes me a while to get back from the mountains where I was at. So to do this meditation, then take a posture for meditation that you believe expresses both a feeling of dignity for yourself, and also a posture that you associate, or you can imagine, you can use to tap into what is wisest in you. A place where there is no agitation, perhaps, that exists below the level of agitation that you might have. And to gently close your eyes, and to take a few moments just to notice how you are right now. Notice if you are agitated or quiet, if you are settled or unsettled, if there's a lot of thinking or not so much thinking. And then within how you are, allowing yourself to be the way you are, take a few gentle, long, deep breaths. Gentle so it's not taxing to do it, just enough to breathe in deeply so there can be a feeling of maybe physical intimacy with your body from the inside. As the lungs expand, the stretching and opening of the chest. As you exhale, to exhale more deeply into the middle of how you are now. Maybe not so much to let go of anything, but to settle in the heart in the middle of who you are, how you are, your experience now. And then letting your breathing return to normal. And if you notice there's any tension or pressure, physical agitation connected to breathing, connected to thinking, as you exhale, you might soften and relax what I call the thinking muscle. Softening behind the eyes and between the temples and the brain, in the face. Maybe as you exhale, softening in the shoulders. And letting the belly relax, soften, releasing the belly from any clenching, a melting of the belly. And softening around the heart, perhaps a melting of the hardness, stiffness around the heart. And now as you exhale, maybe you can let go of your discursive thinking. Any ways that you're having a conversation in your head. Or instead of letting go, softening, quieting that voice. Or if you're thinking images, quieting, stilling the images a bit. And if you can quiet your discursive thinking, perhaps the quieter, deeper thinking of wisdom, deeper thinking that arises more spontaneously, that has maybe less agitation. Can be very quiet thoughts of recognition of what's happening as you breathe, as you sit here. Maybe they're simple thoughts or images which are not even sentences. Maybe they're not even words. Maybe it's a quiet knowing. A quiet knowing of body breathing. A quiet knowing of a body with all its sensations. A quiet knowing of a place within that's not agitated, that's calm and peaceful. Maybe that's a foundation underneath the agitation, if there is some. And as you sit for this meditation, keep settling in to the quiet thinking, the quiet knowing that is intimate and connected to what's happening here, the immediacy of now. If you find yourself wandering off in discursive thoughts and fully engaged in conversations in your head, notice how that's a kind of a alienation, a kind of pulling away from a deeper connection to self. So kind of the more we're in discursive thought, there's less in touch with what we are, with the depth of ourselves. And when wisdom thinking is happening, mindful thinking is happening, deep, quiet place of knowing, you know you're thinking, you know you're there, because you can know that you're not wandering off. You know you're not lost in thought. You're connected here, one breath at a time, with the inhale, with the exhale, and any simple, deeper knowing that comes with that. Some of the deepest places of knowing, of thinking, are not places that are reacting to anything. It's just a simple knowing, a calmness, a peacefulness about or with whatever is happening. The deep, quiet place of thinking does not need to be perfect, does not need things to be ideal or just right. The deep place, wellspring of knowing, is content just to know how it is. And then as we come to the end of this sitting, when there's the obligation to be compassionate, the feeling of responsibility to be loving or kind, that tends to be associated with a discursive thought, a thinking that has stories and ideas and complicated concepts. In the place of where wisdom arises, quiet thinking of the present moment, compassion and care and kindness can also arise, but not as an obligation, but just because it is there. Especially when we encounter the suffering of the world. And to allow your compassion, your care, your kindness, even your love, to spill out from the depths of your heart and spill and flow out into this world. And to let your care reach out to touch the people who are struggling with fire, illness, COVID-19, death and dying, poverty and homelessness and economic distress. May it be that our care flows outwards, so our compassion is broad enough to include them. And may it be that our practice, may it be that our lives are practiced and lived for the welfare and happiness of others. May it be that we work for the betterment, the welfare of all beings everywhere, being content to do it where it's most natural for us to do it, doing it in the simple, ordinary activities of our day even, or doing it in big ways that changes the world. Whatever door opens for you, the next door for your care. The place of deep wisdom is content for whatever that door might be. That is the door, the next door for your compassion. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. So, welcome to this Sunday morning Dharma talk. And for those of you who've been here before and those of you who may be new, I want to invite back Patachara. And Patachara was living on our altar for a while. She was a gift to IMC and IRC, and and she was one of the most important of the earliest Buddhist nuns, who was a teacher of many of the other nuns of the time of the Buddha. And we're very fortunate to have a statue of her, and she's back here today because she lives in Santa Cruz at our retreat center, but the retreat center is about 6 miles from some of the big Santa Cruz, San Mateo County fires that are happening now. And so some of the resident volunteers came here to IMC for shelter, and they brought her along for safekeeping, and very happy to have her back. And she'll be here for a while this time around, and I don't know how long, and nice to have her company. So for those of you who are not in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco Bay Area, there's a kind of a ring of fire around us, just west of here, probably, I don't know, as the crow flies, maybe 5-6 miles, there's fires going on, and down towards Santa Cruz, about 6 miles from Santa Cruz, there's fires. Big fires that are destroying many homes, and there's some 70,000 people who are evacuated down there. And directly south of here, or southeast a little bit, there's one of the largest fires in California history, and the Mount Hamilton Mountains, which is just east of San Jose. And then fires going up slowly up the bay, but big fires up in the northern counties in Napa Valley area. And that also is one of the very biggest fires in the California history. That's burning well over 200,000 acres. And the air here in California and here in the Bay Area intermittently full of smoke. This morning it's relatively clean. There were times where it's been unhealthy air to breathe. And we have people in our community who have lost their homes in the mountains here, and some of them, it's always tragic. Some of them maybe a little bit more tragic than others if all their savings went into their home and everything burned and disappeared in the fire. As far as I know, we don't have anyone who's been injured, but certainly it has a big impact on many of our lives here and what goes on. And to have this happen at the same time as COVID-19 and the wish to be sheltered and to be appropriately distanced from other people so not to either get the COVID-19 or pass it on, it makes it challenging this time when all those evacuees have to go someplace and on the move and not at home. So it's a challenging time, and they say it's challenging not only because of what's happening right now, but also what's coming. The weather's changing tonight. More lightning is supposed to be coming. Most of these fires are lightning fires. Apparently they had about 12,000 lightning strikes in California over the last week, especially last Sunday and Monday, I think. And of those 12,000 lightning strikes, about 500 fires were created all over the state. So forces are quite spread thin and challenging. And so with all that as kind of the context for our lives this weekend, this week, this time, and it's kind of, for California, it's just repeat what happened just some months ago when we had huge fires last year. And seems like it's becoming a regular pattern to have these big fires, and the weather conditions have changed dramatically as to that really allows these fires to occur. So there is a story that begins that once there was a large forest for which there came a storm. Big lightning storm came, and thunderous lightning struck the tops of trees and frightened the animals and the people who lived there. And some of the lightning lit some of the trees on fire. And the trees burst into flames. The flames spread to neighboring trees. The sparks from the trees flew from one tree further away, and pretty soon big parts of the forest was on fire. This could be a story just a few miles away from here in the Santa Cruz Mountains. It's a story that's told. It's said to be told at the time of the Buddha. It's a Jataka tale, birth stories of the Buddha. They're kind of Buddhist fables. And this one is a fable about a small bird. Some people call it a quail, some people a parrot, who found itself in this huge forest fire. And the fact that the description that's given for the fire back then, in ancient India, is almost the same description we can use today. It speaks to the recurrence of these kinds of dangers, these kinds of human experiences that we live in, and world experiences, the coming through a fire. The Santa Cruz Mountains here, the big destruction happened in the big basin redwood forests. And the redwoods are more or less okay, most of them. And they depend on fires to come through. For their whole ecosystem is fire dependent. But the ranger station, the headquarters there, was not fire dependent. In fact, it got destroyed in the process. But the redwood trees continue. So in this Jataka tale, there is this small parrot that is able to fly to safety because it can go fly above the flames. And with a lot of work, it begins to fly above the flames through the smoke and feeling the heat coming up from the ground, from the tops of the trees. And it's flying to the river where it can be safe. And as it looks down into the forest, it sees all these animals running, and animals that are trapped. Deer with its fawn trapped. all these animals that are kind of agitated, screaming, running, trapped and trying to escape the fire. And this just opens the heart of the parrot. And the parrot said, I have to do something. I can't just escape from myself. But what does a small parrot do? And so the parrot goes to the river and dunks into the water to get all its feathers as wet as possible. And carrying the weight of the water on its feather, flaps back. Now it can't fly quite above the fire anymore, but just singed by the fire as it flies along, back to the heart of the fire, the center of it, and then shakes out its leaves so the drops can fall out of its feathers and down into the fire. And those drops, they don't even reach the flames before they sizzle up and evaporate and disappear. And the parrot goes back to the river and does it again and again and again. Now, up in the high heavens, there's gods called devas in India who are living lives of pleasure and luxury and ease. And they look down to see the fire below and the forest burning. And they see this little parrot going to the river, getting water, wetting itself off and shaking its water over the flames and doing it over and over again. And they kind of a little bit laugh at it and say, look, that silly parrot. And the parrot can't make any difference in this big fire. And that's not what it should be doing. And they're a little bit dismissive of the parrot, except for one of the gods. And one of the gods is quiet and very thoughtful, and decides to go visit, and takes the form, shape-shifts into the form of a great eagle, and comes down and flies next to the little parrot and says, Parrot, parrot, my friend, what you're doing is hopeless. Let me give you some advice. You should really go and save yourself. Go someplace where there is no fire. Go to the other side of the river and be safe. And the parrot says, many people give me advice. I don't need advice. What I need is someone who can help me. And that went right into the heart of the great eagle and this deva, this god. And the god looked around and saw what was happening in the fire, and also saw the animals who were struggling and trapped and maybe screaming with the flames coming, and felt, that yes, I want to be a person. I want to be a being like this parrot. I want to be a being that helps. And so the deva made a decision. I'm going to also help this parrot. But as the heart opened up of this deva, so did the tears. And the tears started streaming down off the beak of the great eagle and off its feathers of its face, and it started falling and falling. Because it was the tears of a deva, the tears were immense. And it was almost like it was raining across the forest. And all those tears then that came from the deva's wish to be of help and to dedicate itself to make a difference, then quenched the fire, stilled the fire, and ended the forest fire. And so that is a fable told in ancient India. It ends with a little line that says, and in that lifetime, at that lifetime, is the Buddha speaking, I was the parrot. And all these Jataka tales are stories of the Buddha in different past lives before he became a Buddha. And they say that in each of those lifetimes he had to learn a lesson. And here in the lesson of being a parrot, he learned the lesson of perseverance, the lesson of compassion, the lesson of we do whatever we can. We're not expected to do more than we can, but we do what we can. And this idea, do we do what we can? Are we doing what we can to help this world, to help the forest fires of our lives? In the ancient India and the Buddhist teachings, forest fires, fires are very symbolic, both of the danger of fires themselves, but also other fires that exist, the fires of greed, hate, and delusion. The Buddha talked about 4 great perils: the peril of fire, of floods, of kings, and bandits. And so this, fires come through, but the fires inside of us, the floods inside of us, the kings inside of us, and the bandits inside of us, those can all be dangerous as well. The fires, as I said, is symbolic of greed, hate, and delusion. And greed, hate, and delusion, to some huge way, is also has a role to play in the changing nature of our environment, the environmental changes, the climate changes we have. And so without really looking deeply into ourselves, are we really going to quench the fires? So this idea, we do what we can, no matter how small it is, like the parrot. And like the devas, we let our hearts break open. That's where the compassion resides. And why I say this is that it's certainly deeply, fully a sad thing to have people lose their homes, lose their lives. People die, people get sick. And people get afraid. There's grief to be experienced in this regard. But how to experience grief, how to experience sadness, how to experience the pain of the world without getting agitated, without getting contracted, without getting spinning out into discursive thought. How to kind of connect to it with a broken heart, open heart, so that the compassion that's in there, the care, the love can come forth out of us. So that's the function of practice, Buddhist practice. And Buddhist practice is particularly, that really shows us the path or the way which that we can engage in the world effectively. And one of the key lessons of Buddhist practice, the depth of it, is the lesson that not to be calm, not the lesson to be peaceful amidst of it all, but rather the lesson of not giving in to the forces of agitation, not giving in to greed or hatred, or not succumbing to fear in a way that makes us agitated. And there's a huge difference between saying, let's try to be peaceful and calm, versus saying, it's just, I don't see, it's not worthwhile for me to now get involved in spinning out in my discursive thoughts. It's not worthwhile for me to latch on to the blame that I have, or latch on to self-criticism for what, how could I have done something, or to latch on to anger. It's not worth latching on or picking up certain things. To learn that lesson through practice, to sit quietly enough, attentively enough, and to watch carefully and see very clearly what it's like for the mind not to latch on to any of these things, and to see what it's like to latch on. And as we latch on, to see what is lost, to see how doesn't really serve us. There's a loss in that. This is a phenomenal lesson to learn. It's not worth it. It's not appropriate, but there's a loss in getting caught and agitated. It doesn't mean we don't care. We can actually care better from that deeper place inside. We can care better to the world. We're wiser about the world when we don't give in to all these other things that keep us spinning out and preoccupied and concerned. Of course we do. It's not a crime to do that. Of course we do. Life is challenging. But the practice can teach us how to see learn to recognize. I mean, it takes a while. Sometimes it takes months and years to really start seeing that it's not worth picking up, clinging. It's not worth picking up, latching on. And that's a very different perspective than the perspective that, oh, you're supposed to be peaceful. Because then we can argue, well, being peaceful is okay, but this is not the time to be peaceful. We have to kind of be involved and concerned and get, active. But instead of saying we have to be peaceful, what Buddhist practice teaches us is we don't have to latch on. We don't have to get caught. And this is a profoundly deep and important lesson. Not only when there's a forest fire, not only when there's fires around us, but also for the fires of sickness, old age, and death. The inevitable fires that life comes with being alive. Just as it's natural for the fires to go through Redwood land, it's natural for human beings to get sick, if they're lucky enough to become old, and to die. What do we do then? And so a story I told last year, or an allegory I told last year, the Buddha was talking to a king, and the king said, well, Buddha said something like, how are you? And the king said, well, I'm preoccupied in the things that kings are preoccupied with, and sensual pleasures of all kinds, because he's wealthy and has a lot of power, conquering neighboring countries and warring and all these things. I'm busy. And the Buddha then says this allegory. He said, imagine, dear king, that the mountains of the east, a messenger comes from the east and tells you, king, the mountains of the east are rolling forward towards the capital, towards your palace, towards you. And a messenger from the south comes and says, the mountains of the south are rolling along, crushing everything in its way, coming to you. The mountains of the west, the mountains of the north, they're all converging on you. And it's crushing everything in its way until it comes here. Given that, what would you do then? And the king said, in that case, I will practice the Dharma. And the Buddha said, that's good. That's right. Because the mountains of sickness, old age, and death are coming rolling along. And that's coming for all of us. And there'll come a time, hopefully, for all of us, that if we can be conscious as we come across these big challenges, that the nature of our practice, if it's become strong, becomes really central to how we meet those challenges. And it becomes a time when we're not even like the parrot. We no longer can even do a little bit to help ourselves. The end is coming. And here's where that Dharma lesson is so important. Because if we know so clearly, even as we're facing death, it's just simply not worthwhile. It's not useful. It's not pleasant. There's a loss, a deep, great loss, to latch on to fear, to latch on to anger, to latch on to disappointment, to latch on to resistance, to be fighting, to be hating, to be aversive, to be afraid. It's just not worth latching onto that, being involved in that. And we can see so clearly what is lost as we latch on. And so then we don't do it. The consequence of that is that we come back to a place of peace without being told that you should be dying peacefully, without being told that you don't have to think about all these thoughts about the future, the past, what if, and what's going to be. It's so obvious that you're better off not going there, that you have a home, you have something precious and valuable here and now, even as you're dying. And that place is, you don't want to lose it. It's not worth losing it. That's where wealth is. That's where value is. That's where a deep sense of meaning even is there. That's lost as we latch on. And that is one of the deepest Dharma lessons we can learn as we keep doing this practice and keep being mindful and keep seeing and learning and recognizing what's really going on moment to moment in this life of ours, and how we respond and how we react. And when the time comes for the heart to open and for the metaphoric tears to flow freely and put out the fires of the world the best we can, then may it be so. When the time comes and we experience great loss, we don't have to be afraid of the deep emotional feelings that come with that. If we can meet those and open to them with our mindfulness, if we can learn how to have strong, powerful emotions of even sadness and pain and loss, and even fear, and we've learned not to latch on to anything, not to add anything extra, not to get spin out in discursive thoughts, but this deep respect for what the heart is feeling, which I think is what the story tells about the Deva who wanted to help and just started crying. That's where the healing began happening for the forest. So to allow our humanity, allow these emotions to come, but to learn not to resist, not to hold on, not to cling, not to get involved in discursive commentary, judgments about it. The simplicity of just letting it flow. So we learn this lesson and apply it in so many different places. And sometimes it applies in ways that we want to help the world. Sometimes we apply it so we help ourselves and allow what's inside to be healed and opened and met with respect. And we'll use those lessons at a time when there's no help possible, in the sense that, we're really up against our own death perhaps, and the mountains have finally come. And even then, to meet that without slipping off into discursive thoughts, slipping off into attachment and clinging, this is a powerful and valuable and meaningful way of living and dying and finding our way. We live in a world that's full of danger. There's no denying it. And we live in a world where we can practice. And this practice for our hearts makes all the difference in the world. Don't be the parrot that escapes the fire and doesn't help. Be the parrot that escapes the fire just enough to help, come back and help. Don't be the Deva that is aloof and dismissive of what's happening in the world. Be the Deva that wants to come and help. Hearts opens up and flows. And to be that way, please practice. Do the mindfulness practice. Do the meditation practice. It's one of the most powerful and significant things a person can do with this life we have. So, on this day of forest fires all around us, maybe they're all rolling towards us. May we remember to practice, and may we remember the many ways that we can get our feathers wet and shake them out. There's no amount of helping which is too little. We do what we can. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you next Sunday as well. Maybe next Sunday. I think maybe I'm teaching retreat next Sunday. So we'll see what happens.